Hi and welcome to this week's GMBN Tech Show. Coming up on the show this week we have a look at the new Muc Off Punk powder. That is a powder form that you mix with water essentially to make eco-friendly bike cleaner. Brilliant stuff. Park Tools have leaked what I certainly hope is fake news. We'll be catching that one out in a minute. Some Shimano Saint pedals, some new flat pedals specifically for downhill and free riding. We have a bit of a Cannondale special theme running through the show there. And of course we have some awesome top mods from you lot. Okay, so first up, it's not really a topic as such, but I've had some time to look through this Cannondale book, choosing a screwdriver there as a place marker, and I just want to tell you about how cool the brand is, really. Obviously, saying this, we don't ride Cannondale bikes here, no one's telling me to say this, but I got a copy of this book from Cannondale, which is actually made for their internal use to celebrate their 50 years of being, essentially. So a few cool things about Cannondale you might not know. So it started out in 1971, I've obviously been going to 2021, that's 50 years. They started by making bags. They started in an old railway station. Something cool about that is when they had to fill out their business, basically setting up the paperwork for their business name. They didn't actually have a name at the time, but Cannondale was written on the outside of the station, so they went with that because it sounded cool and it still does. They've been responsible for the head shock, which of course was a suspension unit house in the head tube of the bike with a real cool little cartoon logo. Does anyone remember that? It was called Brad. Cool story with that. We'll get to that a bit later. They've done the lefty fork, of course. They've done loads of innovation really in the cycling world. But probably the biggest thing that's kind of gone under a lot of people's radars is the fact that Cannondale once lost 47 million and basically bankrupt the whole company. It's when they tried to design a motocross bike. Now, I can't emphasize this enough to you. This thing was insane. Cannondale, from the ground up, decided, no, there's nothing wrong with all these other motocross companies out there, but we're going to make one and we're going to make it ourselves. So historically, you would get frames out there and you could spec an engine and you might do a rework on the engine, stuff like that. Choose, I don't know, Showa suspension, and then you can go into business making a motocross bike. I mean, there's way more to that, clearly. But Cannondale were like, no, we're going to make our own frame. We don't want to use that 450cc engine. It's been the Swedish manufactured one that's used by some other brands already. We're going to design our own engine and we're going to make it completely different in the way it works. And it's absolutely bonkers. So this book actually details it quite well. And they're brutally honest about it because there's no escaping the fact that it bankrupted the company. So this is the bike, the MX400, and actually looking at the thing, it's gorgeous and it's got a Cannondale styling running through it. They're experts in aluminium, or aluminum if you're American. And I mean, here we go, and here's the engine itself. Like, it's a really cool read in this book. And actually, I really hope that Cannondale make this book available because it's fascinating stuff. But I'm just going to read this. It says, Cannondale was almost 47 million in the red after losses for 11 straight quarters. Cannondale's share price on the stock market dropped by over 80%. So the company did what it had to do, declaring bankruptcy in 2003 and terminating everyone in the moto factory. That's the real story, straight, no chaser. It does seem that in the motorcycle world, I'm sure a lot of you will be into your motorbikes. I'm sure some people will either correct me or give me some more information that I don't already know. But it seems motorcycle designers, and it's a bit of a community thing, you know, even amongst different brands, motorcycle designers are going to talk, and I'm sure it's like the bike design world, where the manufacturers know what other manufacturers are doing, what they're working on, the materials they're working with, their approaches. It sounds like it's a very similar thing from the wording I've read in this book, but Cannondale still decided to approach things differently. Now, it seems the only other company that had tried to do that was KTM, but they did it 25 years prior, and well, it's KTM, and it just clearly worked. But Cannondale coming in, trying to do all these new things. So they had this frame design that already existed out there. I think Honda used a similar design. Apparently, if this motorcycle ring of designers had seen the frame, they would say, no, you do not want to use that. But Cannondale, like, yeah, we're going to use that design. They changed things, they modified things, they could fit their own engine in there. And they put a vent in the head tube, which sounds a bit crazy to me because you've got a number plate on the front of there, you're going to stop the airflow anyway, but kind of cool incorporating airflow into the frame design. So it does sound like motocross engines are, well, they're more or less like air pumps, aren't they? The way they work, sucking the air through there to make them ignite and stuff. But fascinating stuff to find out. And the fact that, so in this, unique to other brands, they had fuel injection in there, they had their own engine, air intake in the head tube, they had electric start on there, but it sounds like due to the placement of the engine, the way they had to sort of curve part of the chassis around it, when it heated up, i.e. when it's red hot during a race, if you stalled it, which apparently was also a common thing, mid-race you couldn't restart the thing. And I actually did hear a story of one of Steve Peate's Royal Racing events. Dave Hemming turned up on one of these Cannondale motos, couldn't get it started, so I put it straight back in the van and went home. Dave, if you're watching, I'd love to know the full story behind that, because it was a work of art as far as bikes go. And actually, I don't think Cannondale had the credit. Like the famous story was in Dirt Bike Rider, but there was loads of magazines out there that wrote articles on it that fundamentally documented how bad the bike was. But it doesn't sound like it was that bad. It's just they released it too soon, and it had loads of innovation in it that actually some of that stuff will have stuck later on. But essentially, they released it too early because they were designing something they shouldn't have been designing. Should have stuck to bikes. But after the company went bankrupt, a different company called Pegasus bought Cannondale, and they basically got rid of the motorcycle division, but they kept all the key players that needed to keep Cannondale right on track again, and they carried on with the cycling division. Of course, cycling is what they know, that's what they do so well. That's where they make innovations that really do work. But I love the fact that Cannondale do things like this. I mean, choosing my words carefully, because 47 million quid, $47 million is fairly inadjusted. Like that's a huge mistake. But I think it's fascinating that a bicycle brand tried to go into that division full stop. It says a lot about what the designers want and how they work. But hey, for me, this is a bit of a celebration of Cannondale, because I think they've done some of the coolest stuff ever out there, and I think they do a lot of stuff that no one else would dare do. The lefty fork is a prime example of that. Who else would actually bother to go to that hassle to design a fork that's a single leg suspension design? It's not that much lighter than other forks on the market. I mean, granted, it is stiffer and it does work supremely well. The lefty, I'll show you, is unbelievable, unbelievable piece of engineering. It really does work well, but to get the damper, the spring and everything into a single leg, that is just an engineering masterpiece. I think it's so cool. Shoot me down if you want. I really like Cannondale, I really like the brand. And I'd like to get to know them a bit more, actually. I've never really done anything on Cannondale. I'd love to go and do a behind the scenes thing, maybe visit them, come and see some of the stuff from over the years, because they've had loads of crazy concept bikes. There was the one that looked like roller skates, and remember that? Then there was the one that had the suspension with like the concentric pivots on there. So concentric pivots had like rotational springs on there, as far as I remember. It didn't have any sort of conventional dampers that you see on a bike. It had loads of crazy stuff going on in the 90s. And some really cool stuff. And look where they are now. They've got the new Jekyll out with the high pivot on there, which is just a beautiful bike. Now, I'm sorry to say, I don't think you can get hold of this book, but if anyone from Cannondale is watching, you really should make this book available, because it's an excellent read and it's well worth whatever you charged for it. So hopefully you might see one of these appear at some point, but fingers crossed on that one, eh? Okay, so into news now, and we've got all sorts of random stuff coming this week. The first one is the Muc Off Punk Powder. Now this is really cool. In fact, there's a little bit of a video clip featuring Grant Fielder. I think Ben Deacon sneaks in here as well. Almost looks a bit Breaking Bad-ish. I think they said it's Breaking Rad. It's kind of a funny like advert trailer, and it's really good. It's really well made, actually. But the coolest thing about this is it's essentially a plastic-free bike cleaner. It's powder form, and you mix this stuff. So there's no more having to have the huge volumes of water, which means you can better transport this stuff easier. It means you get more for your money. It means it's kinder to the environment and all this stuff. So there's loads of shots of it on screen. So they say it has the same cleaning power you get from the other cleaners. I've not actually got some yet. I've just been reading about it, and I'm so glad that they're choosing this approach. They say readily biodegradable and it's made with plant-based ingredients. Brilliant stuff. Significantly smaller than our other cleaners, which is great because A, it takes up less space in the shed or the garage. It can be taken with you for mid-adventure clean, so if you're going on a road or whatever. Dramatically reduces their own carbon footprint, 92% less packaging. That is great, and I think if every manufacturer tried to just reduce their packaging a little bit, we'd be in a much better place. So I think that's really cool. They say estimated saving 61 tonnes of plastic a year, which, bravo, I think that's great. So it's $14.99 in the UK, the only prices I've got for the moment, for a twin pack of 30 gram sachets, and that makes 2 litres of cleaner, so a litre each for the 30 gram packets. That's great. So, and there's a couple of ways you can do that. So you can either use an existing bottle that you've already got, or they're doing like a bundle, which they call the Bottle for Life. It's $29.99, and it's a reusable aluminium bottle, so it's not a plastic bottle. Used as a trigger, you put your stuff on the inside, you've got a bottle that's going to last you a very long time on there as well, and it's quite cool as well. I really want one of those bottles, and I look forward to using that product. I think it's a really good idea. We've all got to clean our bikes, and if we can do it by being a little bit more friendly to the environment, then hey, I'm all for that. I think that's great. Way to go, Muc Off. I think it's awesome. And actually, next up in news is something I recorded last week, but it was embargoed, so I couldn't get it out. So here's a little clip of the Orange Evo from last week's show. Right, moving on. Orange Alpine Evo, so another new bike. So don't confuse this with an enduro race bike, although you could quite easily race enduro on it. It's more of a big mountain bike. If you want to go out on alpine holidays, go on chairlifts, just smash runs all day long, you need a bike like this to handle this sort of stuff. Obviously you could do it on a downhill bike, but you're limited in the pedaling respect. So 155mm rear, 160mm front. It's got a more progressive rear end than ever, and it's also a stiffer and more efficient rear end as well. So the way they've designed it is asymmetrical now. So really cool stuff on here. So they've lowered the non-drive side chainstay. I think you might be able to see here. I don't know if you're familiar with the Orange layout on the bikes. They've pretty much always had this cantilever style rear end on them. And they've also increased the tube thickness on there. It's given 20% more stiffness and 15% more strength without really having to sort of massively redesign stuff. It's got a limited lifetime crash replacement policy on there. I guess the limited means it's for the original owner only, but either way, that's brilliant news for you if you're buying one. It's got the UDH hanger on there, so the SRAM Universal Derailleur hanger. Brilliant stuff. 4 sizes, small, medium, large and extra large. Reaches from 458 to 513, so nice and long on there. 63 degree head angle, 76 degree seat angle on there. Mega cool. Again, this is like quite new news in the inbox here. The launch model, I've only got pricing for in £, and I've only got pricing for this model at the time. This is it on screen. Alpine Evo launch edition. So it's got a weird, they say it's pearlescent stealth green. On my monitor, which is broken because one of the lights fell on it, it looks nearer black to me, but you'll have to tell me what it looks like on screen. I think it looks pretty cool though. So Lyric Ultimate, Super Deluxe Ultimate Shock, Shimano XT, Renthal Hope, STG kit, dripping with stuff on there. E13 wheels, Maxxis tyres. It all feels like it's kind of like a choice spec on there. It's really nice. I kind of not fallen out of love with orange bikes. I just kind of guess they've gone off my radar a bit. But I saw the guys when I was out in Val di Fassa, and I noticed that the bikes were incredibly supple when I watched them racing on course, and also really quiet. And I love a quiet bike. I cannot stand a bike that makes noise, so the Orange Evo gets my vote. Okay, so I'm back into this week's show, and I want to talk about the new Shimano Saint pedals. So this one was a weird one. This one was actually spotted and shown to me. I didn't even get a press release on this at all, but Shimano have quietly released their new Saint downhill pedals. This is them on screen. They're immensely thin. They're made from like a carbon composite body, chromoly axle on there. They've got bushings on them to keep everything super lightweight on there, but very, very strong. So they've got, they're massive as well, 121 by 110 millimeters. So if you've got big feet, these could be really good pedals for you. They've got 10 pins plus 4 additional pins per side on the pedals there. 6mm and 3mm pins available. So the 6mm will have proper shin ripping territory there, but imagine the grip you're going to get from those. Seems really good. They're 13.9mm thick at their deepest and 11.6 at the thinnest. So the deepest is going to be really where the axle is. Obviously to house that axle in there, it's going to have to sort of flare out slightly. Kind of a little bit like the Crank Brothers pedals. I haven't got any here to show you, but they do the same thing. They're immensely thin. They're just a tiny bit thicker in that one place, but hey, that works. Like I say, chrome with axle and bushing design, you can see them here. And there's a little weird notch in them where the axle actually goes into pedals, where it's got a bit of open air. Now, I'm assuming that the Shimano designers did something, they basically left it like this so you can force mud through rather than it sitting on the pedal, in which case it would work like the SPD pedals. So if that's the case, then that's quite a smart design, just enabling you to not have mud on the pedal surface. And there you go, 397 grams a pair, and they look pretty neat. But I'd imagine at the moment you won't see them for some time. Lead times on many products still in the cycling industry is a bit of a struggle. And in fact, I might do a bit of an update on next week's show just on some lead times and things, because a few brands have told us that they're still struggling to get stuff as well. So I'd imagine that's really hard for you lot if you're trying to buy new shiny bike stuff. Next up in news is something I spotted on Instagram. So MB Cycle Rear, I think they're in Hazelmere in Surrey. Really cool shop. I know some of our boys have been down there. Check this custom bike out. This is unreal. So it's a Specialized Stumpy Evo, I think, Joker edition. So you got it's blue and red, and you flip it and it's blue and red. So the fork's been sprayed up custom, and the frame is split down the middle. Beautiful bit of design. So there's a bunch more shots here. Now the paint job, I looked into this, it's by a company called Velofique. but really cool work. And actually I was looking at their Instagram page and they do some stunning artwork. And actually I also found this Yeti SB130. I was also drawn to it because of the colour, I'm just obsessed with them. On screen, so it's a bit of a retro mod kind of approach. So you notice on the yellow fork there, it says AccuFox. That's a bit of a nod back to the Answer AccuTrax forks that Yetis used to come with. So that's a mega cool bike. But Velofeek or Velofeek, apologies if I've not said your Instagram handle correctly, but I love what you're doing. And big shout out to MB Cycle, we're a really cool crew down there. Next up though, and lastly in news, thankfully it's the last thing in news, Park Tool Crocs. Yeah, so if there's ever been a Marmite product in the world, it's Crocs. I know that Neil, I'm pretty sure, would rather cut his own feet off than wear a set of Crocs. Rich loves his Crocs. I'd rather walk on broken glass in bare feet than wear a pair of Crocs myself. I'm a Birkenstock kind of person, which you'll probably laugh at as well. But hey, this is pretty cool. So this is a post by Park Tools. And I think as you look through the comments and that, please do look at the post, it's pretty funny. It's a very mixed thing. I've never known a single product in the world that's actually as divisive as like that. It's really sort of dividing people between loving and hating them. Crocs. So let's have it then. Crocs, yay or nay? Do you love them or do you hate them? Let us know in the comments underneath. Just a bit of harmless fun. And on to the next bit of the show. Okay, it's quiz time now. You know the drill, the 3 questions coming at you on the screen. This week they are Cannondale themed, so hopefully you listened to the beginning of the show. There might have been a few clues in there. If not, there's loads of cool stuff online. VintageCannondale.com, amazing website for old archive stuff. In fact, there's a link right there to VintageCannondale.com and another one in the description underneath. They've got all the archive stuff, all the original catalogues. If nothing else, if you can't get hold of one of these books, most of the stuff that's in here is on that website actually. So you can go through and look at the really early vintage stuff. It's mega cool. It's worth a look if you've got like half an hour and you're just doing a bit of surfing. Anyhow, first question on screen now. The Cannondale Beast of the East was what sort of bike? Next question. What was the long-term car sponsor of the Cannondale team? Now this really was in the 90s, but for a long period they had a major car sponsor. They used to wear it on the legs of their shorts, and obviously all the team riders went around in very nice models of this car brand. Okay, and a sort of a double whammy to finish on here. Cannondale famously developed loads of weird suspension forks, really cool ones. One of them had the shock absorber housed in the frame itself. What was the name of that fork? And also for a bonus point, the logo for that fork was a little cartoon figure with a really big forehead. Do you know the name of that cartoon character? We'll pick up the answers in a while. Okay, now let's dive into top mods. Got a couple of great ones this week, both hardtail themed. Now one of them, right here, coming up on screen is the first one. Now this one's kind of took me by surprise. I was looking at the bike thinking, that's really familiar, but I have no idea what it is. And this is from Mark in Dorset, and it's a Sick Wolf bike. So, don't know if anyone remembers, there was a bike company for a while called Sick Bicycles. I'd completely forgotten they existed. Are they out there? What even happened? They just kind of disappeared overnight, it seemed. But anyhow, they made pretty radical geometry hardtails, and this is one. So, Mark says, after an absence of nearly 20 years, I got back into mountain biking 2 years ago. Bikes of the 90s, which I loved but could never afford as a teenager, started to crop up for sale locally. Yeah, this is how it goes, unfortunately, Mark. I actually got offered a Proflex the other day by a friend, Jay Hardy. He said one was going, and it was just the original red one that I'd always wanted, but got no room for it. I mean, I could have got divorced and had plenty of room for it, but didn't fancy that option. So you got 3 90s Marines and a Kona as well. I've got the Bug Bad. That said, as a dude rapidly approaching his 40th birthday and on the large side, a more modern bike seemed rather appealing. So before the first lockdown, I treated myself to a new Vitus Nucleus VR. Very nice. They're doing good things actually. I'm going to go and see those guys soon because I want to find out a bit more about what's going on, and I want to go to Ireland. Not really been before. I enjoyed my riding even more than previously. It was during this period I also found the show and watching your videos inspired me to take on my own project. Awesome. When a rather nice and quite sought after Sick Bicycles Wolf Marino built frame came up for sale locally, I couldn't say no. I sold the Vitus, kept the BX dropper and the Fidlock to fund the majority of parts, which are a mix of new and second hand. Yeah, that's a great way to build a bike. As everyone's well aware, stock's a massive issue. It took me 5 weeks to source everything. Seriously, dude, you've done a great job on the bike. I've forgotten how slack those head tubes are. Like the side-on shot, look how slack it is. It almost looks like you jumped off a bus shelter and it's just like raked out. But hey, it's really aggressive hardtail. Reminds me a little bit actually of some of the BTR bikes. Same thing, mega steep seat angle on there, mega slack head angle up front. But I love what you've done. E13 wheels on Zakila tyres, Brand X dropper, nuke-proof bar stem, DMR death grips, RockShox 35 gold, RL debonair. Just dripping with stuff. Really, really cool stuff on there. And really good to see that you're really back in the mountain bike and got the bug. And I do love the fact, I mean, it resonates with me massively. Similar age to you, you know, buying the bikes that you couldn't afford back in the day. And you can get it for a steal now if you're lucky, and if you look around. But hey, it's great. Always good to build up a bike yourself as well. Okay, and the next one is from Gary in FL. Is that Florida, USA? Apologies if it's not, but from the USA. Amazing stuff. After buying this Plus tyre bike secondhand in the height of the pandemic, riding it all over North Central Florida, yes, I did get it right, and taking it on a trip, it was time for some changes. Brakes needed a bleed, light tyre casings were worn down, 125 dropper wasn't giving maximum range of motion, so got to work on the bike. And look at some of the shots on this. So you properly like gone to town on this and done a paint job on it. So you used a duplicolour metal cast enamel tint over a chrome base to give the appearance of a candy coat. Dude, that's really cool. Look at the finish on that. That's mega. And you put an angled cups in the headset there to slacken it off a bit. That's a great idea. Resulting geometry 66 to 66.5 estimated there, and 73 to 73.5 seat tube angle. Yes, not as relevant on a hardtail because it didn't change, of course, with the rear suspension, but yeah, it looks good. 450mm reach, 435 chainstays, all good stuff. I love the fact you've done a paint job yourself. I always admire it when someone goes as far as doing a paint job on their own bike, because that's a serious bit of work. And there's that the head tube cup system. That's really neat, the slack arse system. Not seen those, so I've used the Cane Creek system before, and I've used, God, I forget, there's another angled cup company, a British one actually I've used. I've got one in my old Intense bike, and they're decent, except they're not adjustable. You just pick the angles you want, put the cups in. Either way, really, really good system, but that's really quite cool. Liking the approach on that. Nice shots, and there's all the sort of build pictures, and there's even a little video clip as well. But look at the finish on that. I'm actually amazed. I need to paint the bike, don't I? I've seen that GCN and GCN Tech have done stuff recently. In fact, they're over at Fat Creations doing paint jobs. Quite envious of that. I've wanted to go for a long time. Right, need to get my arse in gear, don't I? But hey, some great top mods, two great hardtails, both looking awesome. Okay, and we've also got time for a bit of rewind action, a bit of retro stuff going on. So the first one here is from Jamie. He's not said where he is, but it's a Trek 8000. Classic old bike, that one. National Park, Hog Kempen. Bought my 8000 for $20 secondhand, and then it's been stripped down, rebuilt as a daily commuter. Now it's in its summer mode. I've got it dialed as my bike packing bike. What can I say? Triple up front, canty brakes, and 26 ain't dead. Yeah, it's not dead. None of this is dead. I know just about the stuff, but hey, it's bikes. If the bike works, enjoy the thing. Go and ride it. There's enough spares for every bike out there. But this is cool to see the attention to detail. So I guess that's what it used to look like. Yeah, it's very familiar. Feels like a bike from my era, actually, with canty brakes on there and the L-bend bar ends. Cell Royale saddle? Is that, or is that rolls? Can't really think what that is, but there you go, the classic Trek 8000 aluminium frames, or aluminum. And there it is in bike packing mode. Damn, I really need to find another presenter to go and do a bike packing adventure with this year. I'm desperate to do one. I might see if I can get Jonesy over on GMBN to figure something out. So I had a really good one with him a couple of years ago. Went on the e-bikes, we took the chargers with us, just did an overnighter. I wasn't really bike packing, but I'd love the opportunity to go a bit further and do some stuff. And, well, yeah, adventure on bikes. It's all good, isn't it? But that's cool to see it being used. Doddy Cross. I've been past that sign many times. That's down near Heniot, I think, isn't it? Or somewhere like that, down in Cornwall. I've got friends who live down that way. I've seen that sign. I've often thought about nicking it, but that would make me a thief, and I'm not a thief, so I've not nicked it. But it would look really quite cool in my workshop, wouldn't it? I don't get crossed that often, though. Some people that know me might disagree with that, but I really don't. Nice picture to see. Next one is a 2001 Klein Mantra Carbon. Now there's a bike for you. There's a classic bike with just two completely different handling traits. So this bike, if you're not familiar, is, well, it's got a single pivot on there, but it's a unified rear triangle. So essentially what that means is your bottom bracket is part of the chainstays and the pivot is in front of them. Now, how high you have the pivot on the bike depends on how the bike feels. Now, this Trek on screen, I made a video on, a retro versus modern for a Shimano, it was an XTR video. I borrowed this Trek Y bike, that's got really low pivot, so the suspension is very active when you're sat down and not quite as active stood up, but it still works. Whereas the Klein here, as you can see on screen, back to the Klein, it's got a very high pivot, which meant when you're stood up, it was still like a hardtail. Basically, the suspension just didn't work at all. And when you sat down, then it would just pivot in half. Crazy, wild looking bike. Kind of looked really cool. I've never rode one, but I can't imagine that they were like the most responsive suspension on them. But for what they're intended at the time, to pedal like a hardtail, but give you the comfort of a suspension bike, well, I guess they did that. But hey, it's a Klein, so therefore it's kind of cool. I made a video all about Kleins actually. Here's a shot on screen from that video. If you've not seen it, it's the most bonkers retro bike collection I think I've seen. As in like the condition of the bikes, just phenomenal. I'm going to be making a few retro videos actually at the Malverns Classic at the end of this month. Hopefully if you're going along, you're going to be there, come and say hi. I'm DJing in the evenings there, I'm going to be hanging out, I'm going to be riding, I'm going to be shooting some retro stuff. I think I'm one of the judges for the Muc Off Retro Show and Shine as well, so hey, loads of fun to be had. Come and say hi, come and have a beer and just chat about bikes and stuff. That's what we're there for. But yeah, cool stuff. But that video of the Klein one is underneath in the description. Please check it out. It's really, really cool. Great stuff to see. Oh, there we go. That's the end of Rewind. Right, next up then, quiz answers. Okay, how did you get on? Did you get any of those or are you completely miffed on them? Right, so the first question was, the Cannondale Beast of the East was what sort of bike? Did you get that? Well, it's a rigid bike actually, and the forks on it were known as pepperoni forks. You could call it a hardtail, I guess, because some people might have put suspension on them. And I guess later on they might have put head shock units on them. But to start with, it was just a rigid bike, had a very high bottom bracket on there. It was designed for riding on the east coast of America on specific rocky trails. So they called it the Beast of the East. And because of the very high bottom bracket on it, it was favoured by a lot of trial style riders for what they're riding. In fact, Martin Ashton went on to ride a lot of those over the years, and then obviously he had some bikes, I think like FS 700s and whatever, that had the head shock sort of design on them, and of course he rode the rigid ones as well. In fact, here's a shot from the book of Martin on, not on a Beast of the East actually, I don't think, but I'll show you anyway because it's very cool. How good is that? Okay. Now I might have just given away the next answer by showing you this picture, but what was a long-term car sponsor of the Cannondale team? Did you get it? It was Volvo. It was the Volvo Cannondale team for, I don't even know how long, a crazy amount of time. They were just like two names that were just matched up together so well. I remember Martin going everywhere with his the big Volvo estate car with Cannondale graphics all over it and his crazy custom-built aluminium trailer on there in typical Cannondale style with all his trials rig set up on there. Super cool those years. Okay, and Cannondale had a suspension fork with the shock housed in the head unit. Remember what it was called? I've just referenced it, and I've referenced it earlier in the video as well. Yeah, it's called head shock. So their concept was you could have two telescopic designs, which were great, but if they could house a single hydraulic design in the head tube of the bike, you could make the fork nice and stiff at the bottom, like a uni crown style fork. It could be immensely stiff, immensely strong, immensely light, which is where Cannondale were going with it. But you had to obviously have their frame, but that was great because of the way they like to incorporate things, and it did look super neat. You had a single dial on the top to adjust the amount of damping on there, and they just felt brilliant. I used to love them. But rumour has it amongst mechanics that used to work on them, they were very hard to maintain because they used needle bearings just like the Lefty style system did. But double-edged sword there, hard to maintain, but that was the key to the way they rode so well. I still really like them, and I'd secretly like a bike with a head shock on it, maybe just to build up as a commuter bike or something like that. There's something about them that's just very cool. Now the graphic on them with a big forehead at the bike, the forehead was supposed to represent the head tube size with all the information and the shock and stuff on the inside. And that was called Brad. Anyone get that? The cool story about Brad is this was a bit of a mistake, or someone misheard it. In Pulp Fiction, the scene with Samuel L. Jackson where they go into the room with Flock of Seagulls and the other two guys, where he basically guns him down, he says, "Check out the big brain on Brett." It's Brett, but they thought they said Brad. So they went with Brad because they preferred the name, essentially, and it became a bit of an in-house joke. They worked out that it was Brett, but they went with Brad because it, I guess, made them laugh, and Brad was the little hedgehog dude. So there you go, another little random story there, but more innovation from Cannondale. I love those things. Oh, there we go. That's the end of this week's GMBN Tech Show. Hopefully you enjoyed the random ramblings about bikes. And don't forget, let us know what you thought about the Crocs in the comments underneath, and what you think about Cannondale and all the Muc Off stuff. Pretty crazy stuff. But be nice. As always, have a great time riding your bike over the next few days, and I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ra.